The blinding glare of his own headlights, reflected by the sheeting rain, was all Mike O'Connell saw for a split second before the impossible image registered. A splash of white crumpled and stark against the black, wet asphalt. His boot stomped the brake pedal with the desperate force of a man fighting for a life. 18 tons of steel screamed in protest. Tires clawing at the slick highway, the massive rig jackknifing slightly before shuddering to a violent halt, mere inches from the woman, a wedding dress, soaked, torn, and impossibly out of place in this desolate storm. Her bouquet, a vibrant splash of color now broken and scattered, lay like fallen soldiers around her. In that frozen moment, the world silent save for the hiss of air brakes and the drumming rain, Mike's heart hammered against his ribs. He knew, with a certainty that chilled him deeper than the storm, that something utterly shocking, something evil had brought her here, and a voice, older than memory, whispered that he might be the only thing between her and whatever horror pursued. Mike O'Connell was a man forged in the crucible of duty and hardened by the long, solitary miles of America's highways. At 48, the lines that surround his eyes spoke of countless sunrises watched from his cab and the unyielding focus of his years in the Marine Corps. Rock, they'd called him, for his steadiness under fire, a quality that now translated into the unwavering reliability of Big Mike, the handle familiar to those who shared the asphalt arteries of the nation. His Peterbilt, a gleaming beast of chrome and power, was more than his livelihood. It was a sanctuary, a rolling symbol of independence and hard-won self-reliance. Inside, meticulous order reigned. Logbook precise, a stainless steel thermos ever ready, and a small, cherished photo of his daughter, Sarah, her bright college smile a constant beacon on his dash. Raising her alone for the past decade had been his most profound mission, one he tackled with the same quiet dedication he'd once given his country. He knew these roads, from the whispering pines of the Pacific Northwest to the vast, sun-drenched heart of Texas. He understood their beauty and their treachery. This particular stretch of highway, however, now felt alien, charged with an unseen menace. Earlier, Sarah's voice, full of youthful optimism as she talked about her teaching aspirations, had been a comfort. "Drive safe, Dad," she'd said. "Always do, sweetheart," he'd promised. The memory now felt like a premonition. A deeper, colder memory flickered. The dust, the screams, a brother in arms he couldn't reach in a land far from home. That single, searing instance of perceived failure had become an unspoken oath. Never again. Not if he could help it. Integrity, courage, protecting the vulnerable. These weren't just words from forgotten pledge. They were the lodestones of his character, the quiet strength that now propelled him out of his seat and into the storm. The sudden silence after he killed the engine was profound, broken only by the relentless downpour and the urgent amber pulse of his hazard lights. He grabbed the heavy maglite, its powerful beam slicing through the rain as he swung down from the cab, the cold shock of the deluge barely registering. His entire being was focused on the still form. Closer now, the beam illuminated the tragedy in stark detail. She was young, so young. Her hair, once artfully arranged, clung in dark, wet tendrils of face pale as marble. The wedding dress, a whisper of lace and satin, was brutalized, ripped, stained with mud and what looked like engine grease. One delicate strap was broken, the train a sodden, tattered mess. Her feet, bare and vulnerable, were scratched and bleeding on the gritty asphalt. He knelt, the flashlight beam trembling slightly in his hand as he scanned her face. Closed eyes, dark lashes stark against her ashen skin. Was she? He leaned in, his breath catching, until he saw it, the faintest rise and fall of her chest. A wave of relief, sharp and fierce, washed over him. "Ma'am!" His voice, accustomed to cutting through engine roar, was consciously softened. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" A low moan, a sound of pure anguish. Her eyelids fluttered, then opened, revealing eyes clouded with terror and disorientation. "You're going to be okay," Mike stated, his tone infused with a certainty he didn't entirely feel but knew she needed to hear. I'm here to help you. He performed a rapid visual assessment, his old training kicking in. No immediate signs of catastrophic bleeding, but her pallor, the way she was curled against the cold, screamed of shock and incipient hypothermia. He had to get her out of this freezing rain. I need to move you, ma'am. Into my truck where it's warm, he explained, keeping his voice calm and even. She recoiled, a tiny, broken sound escaping her lips. No, please don't, she whispered, her voice a threadbare rasp. It's all right. My name is Mike. I'm a truck driver. You're safe with me. I won't let anything else happen to you. He scanned the oppressive darkness around them. No other lights, no sounds but the storm. The profound isolation of this place pressed in. How did a bride end up here, alone, in such a state? There was no wrecked limousine, no frantic wedding party. Just her and the palpable aura of violence. He spotted a dark, angry bruise blooming on her cheekbone, partially concealed by her wet hair, and then his blood ran cold, raw. Chafe marks on her slender wrists, stark against her pale skin. Marks like rope burns, or restraints. This was an accident. This was an escape. The woman, she still hadn't given a name, began to shiver uncontrollably, each tremor a visible wave of misery. Mike pulled out his phone, the screen already slick with rain, and dialed 911, the numbers glowing eerily in the darkness. 911, what is your emergency? The operator's voice was a small beacon of order. This is Mike O'Connell. I'm a long-haul trucker. Highway 17, mile marker 224, about 10 miles east of Preston Falls. I've found a young woman beside the road. She's wearing a wedding dress. She's semi-conscious, appears to have injuries, and is suffering from severe exposure. He rattled off his location with practiced precision. Help is on the way, sir. Can you describe her condition? Is she responsive? Barely. She's trying to speak. Looks like she's been through hell itself. He instinctively shielded her slightly from the wind-driven rain with his own body. She has marks on her wrists, like she was tied up. Suddenly, her eyes flew open, locking onto his with a raw, desperate terror that twisted something deep inside him. He's coming. She gasped, her voice cracking. He's looking for me. Who, ma'am? Who's looking for you? Mike kept his voice gentle, betraying none of the sudden, sharp alarm that surged through him. A violent coughing fit seized her, cutting off her words, and she sagged, her small strength deserting her. The dispatcher continued. Sir, if you can, stay on the line. Is she in danger from traffic? No. My rig's blocking the lane, hazards flashing, but she said someone's looking for her. And given her condition, I believe her. He had to get her to safety. Now, ma'am, I have to lift you. We need to get you warm. Into the cab. A flicker of assent, a tiny nod, trust warring with fear in her eyes. Mindful of potential hidden injuries, Mike scooped her up. She was terrifyingly light, almost bird-like in his strong arms. As he lifted her, a small metallic object slipped from her tightly clenched fist, falling to the asphalt with a soft, almost unheard clink. He made a mental note to retrieve it. He carried her towards the looming sanctuary of his Peterbilt, the rain a relentless curtain. Each step was sure, his physical strength easily managing her slight weight, but his mind was a whirlwind. A bride in a ruined dress, bound, bruised, and hunted. This was a scene from a dark thriller, not a stormy night on an American highway. Carefully, he maneuvered her up the steps and settled her onto the passenger seat of the warm, dry cab. The sudden change in environment made her gasp, then shiver even more intensely for a moment before the blessed warmth began to seep in. He reached behind his seat, pulling out the thick woolen blanket his Sarah had gifted him, wrapping it around her small, trembling form, tucking it in gently. You're safe now, he repeated, the word to vow as much as a reassurance. He climbed back into his own seat, the dispatcher still on the line. She's in my cab, wrapped in a blanket. She's very weak, but she's out of the elements. Understood, Mr. O'Connell. Police and paramedics are en route. ETA is approximately 10 to 15 minutes. If she's able, can you ask for her name or any identification? Mike glanced at the young woman. Her eyes were closed again, her breathing shallow but more regular. He was reluctant to press her. I don't see a purse or any ID. She dropped something small. When I picked her up, I'll look for it once she's being cared for. His gaze fell on a pitiful, mud-spattered bouquet still lying on a road outside, its white roses a mockery of joy. Then he noticed her left hand resting limply. No wedding ring. A bride, fleeing something terrible, with no ring on her finger. The wrongness of it all deepened. The dispatcher's voice pulled him back. "Sir, are you in a well-lit, secure area?" "As secure as this rig can make it. It's dark as a tomb out here, but we're lit up like a beacon." Then, a subtle shift in the rain-streaked landscape caught his eye in the side mirror. Far down the dark ribbon of road behind them, a pair of headlights materialized. They weren't approaching with any speed. They were moving slowly, too slowly, almost prowling. A knot of pure ice formed in Mike's gut. "Ma'am," he said softly, his voice low and urgent, "the person you mentioned, the one you're afraid of, do you remember what kind of vehicle they were in?" Her eyes fluttered open, filmed with exhaustion and fear. "Dark, black SUV, big, expensive," she mumbled. Then her eyes widened, a fresh wave of terror washing over her face. He had others with him. Bodyguards. Mike's blood turned to ice water. He glanced back at the mirror. The headlights were still there, distant but unmistakable. And they were advancing. "Dispatcher," he said, his voice now tight with controlled urgency. "I believe we might have company. There's a vehicle approaching from the east, moving very slowly. It matches the description the victim just gave me." The storm raged outside, but inside the cab, a far more dangerous tempest was gathering. The woman, whose name he still didn't know, wasn't just a victim of a random crime. She was a fugitive from a powerful, ruthless enemy, and they were closing in. Mike O'Connell, former Marine, current trucker, found himself on an unexpected battlefield. He glanced at the photo of his own smiling daughter. His resolve solidified into unyielding steel. He was no longer just a driver. He was a shield. The distant headlights paused for a long, agonizing minute, then resumed their slow, predatory creep towards Mike's rig. Every instinct Mike possessed screamed danger. This wasn't a curious onlooker. This was a hunter tracking its prey. He kept his voice steady for the dispatcher, a lifeline of calm in the brewing storm. "The vehicle is definitely approaching, ma'am. Still ways out, but they're not behaving like normal traffic." "Copy that, Mr. O'Connell. Officers have been updated. We strongly advise you to remain in your vehicle and do not engage if they approach." Easy for her to say from a safe distance, Mike thought grimly. He wasn't about to sit idle while these wolves circled. His mind, honed by years of assessing threats, raced through tactical options. His truck was a formidable barrier, high and solid, but it was also immobile, a conspicuous target. He remembered the object the woman had dropped. It could be vital. "Ma'am," he said, turning to her, his voice low but infused with reassuring strength. "We need to be smart. What's your name? Tell me anything more you can. Every detail might help." Tears welled, cutting paths through the grime on her face as she finally found her voice. "Sarah," she whispered, the name of fragile breath. "My name is Sarah." Not as Sarah, but another, caught in an unimaginable nightmare. It was supposed to be my wedding day. A sound, half sob, half bitter laugh, escaped her. My stepfather, he arranged it all. To a man I'd never met. A monster, for his business, for power. Her voice broke, thick with despair. I couldn't. I wouldn't. I ran, right before the ceremony. Climbed out a window. The horrifying picture snapped into focus. This wasn't a runaway bride in the conventional sense. This was a desperate bid for freedom from a forced marriage, a modern-day horror story orchestrated by someone wealthy and devoid of conscience. The men in the approaching SUV weren't concerned family. They were retrievers, sent to bring back valuable property. They found out I was gone, locked me in a room while they figured out what to do, Sarah continued, her gaze fixed on some unseen horror. I managed to pry a bar loose from an old window, climbed down, tore my dress all to pieces, ran for hours to the woods, then fields until I saw the highway. She clutched the blanket tighter, her knuckles white. He won't stop looking. My stepfather, he never stops until he gets what he wants. Mike's jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached. The sheer, unadulterated arrogance of it, the callous disregard for a young woman's life and liberty, ignited a cold, righteous fury within him. This was the kind of fight he understood, the kind that resonated with every fiber of his Marine past, protecting the innocent from the predators of the world. The SUV was closer now, perhaps only a quarter-mile back, its progress still unerringly deliberate, as if its occupants were meticulously planning their approach. Mike made a split-second decision, his military training overriding any civilian hesitation. Dispatcher, they're still advancing. I'm going to reposition my rig. I'll create a better defensive posture and ensure they can't box us in before your units arrive. Sir, we advise against any action that could escalate. With all due respect, ma'am, Mike interrupted, his voice firm, my primary concern is the immediate safety of this young woman. I'm not leaving her vulnerable. He didn't wait for a response. With a roar, the Peterbilt's powerful diesel engine sprang back to life, its deep rumble a growl of defiance in the night. He checked his mirrors and, with a skill born of countless tight maneuvers, he expertly angled the massive truck further across both lanes, the trailer forming an impenetrable steel barricade. He switched his headlights to high beam, aiming them directly down the road, like accusing spotlights, effectively blinding anyone in the approaching vehicle. His hazard lights continued their insistent rhythmic pulse. It was a clear, unambiguous message. You go no further. He then remembered the glint of metal Sarah had dropped. Stay here, he commanded Sarah gently, his voice a mixture of authority and reassurance. Lock this door behind me. Don't open it for anyone but me or a uniformed police officer. Do you understand? Sarah, her eyes wide with a terrifying mix of fear and a newly kindled spark of hope, nodded mutely. He'd given her something to focus on, a small act of control in a situation where she had none. Mike once again braved the storm, the wind tearing at him, the rain stinging his face. He quickly scanned the glistening asphalt where he'd lifted Sarah, his flashlight beam cutting through the gloom. There, a small, intricately carved silver locket, antique in appearance, nestled against the rough pavement. He snatched it up, its cold metal a stark contrast to the warmth of his calloused palm. It felt important, perhaps her only link to a better past. He secured it in his pocket. As he straightened, ready to return to the cab's relative safety, the SUV's headlights flared aggressively, much closer now, perhaps only a few hundred yards distant. They halted, a beat of silence. Then a high-powered spotlight ignited on their roof, its harsh beams sweeping toward his rig, a glaring, malevolent eye attempting to pierce the blinding defense of his own high beams. A familiar surge of combat adrenaline coursed through Mike. This was the engagement point. They were making their play. He scrambled back up into the cab, slamming the door and throwing the lock. Sarah was watching him, her breath catching in her throat, her small hand pressed to her mouth. They're here, he stated, his voice a low growl. But so are we, and help is definitely on its way. He reached for his CB radio, his hand steady, and switched to Channel 19, the lifeline of the open road. Breaker 19 for any and all ears out there. His voice boomed into the microphone, clear and strong despite the static. This is Big Mike, eastbound on Highway 17, right at mile marker 224, just a stone's throw east of Preston Falls. I've got a critical situation here. Folks, a young lady, a damsel in genuine distress, has escaped a real bad scene. We got some unwelcome visitors in a dark SUV. Looks like they mean to cause serious trouble. The road is currently blocked by yours truly. Any drivers in the vicinity, be aware this situation is volatile. Law enforcement is en route. But if you're close by, your headlights and presence wouldn't go amiss. Standing by. It was a gamble, but the brotherhood of the road was strong. Truckers looked out for each other, and often for anyone in peril on their shared domain. He prayed someone was listening. Someone was close. The SUV spotlight continued to probe his cab, an invasive, searching beam. Then a door on their vehicle opened. One dark silhouette emerged, then a second, materializing like specters from the rain-swept darkness. They began to walk towards his truck, their pace unhurried, radiating a chilling confidence. Far too confident. Sarah let out a small, strangled whimper, instinctively shrinking back against the seat, trying to make herself invisible. Mike placed a reassuring hand briefly on her arm. "Stay low. They can't reach you in here." His gaze, however, remained locked on approaching figures, his mind a steel trap, analyzing, preparing. He wished for more than his wits and the sheer bulk of his rig, but they would have to suffice. The core tenets of his Marine training echoed. Utilize your environment, leverage your strengths, project unwavering resolve. This desolate highway was his terrain now. He was the bulwark. He would not be moved. The two men advanced, their expensive, dark suits already soaked and clinging, a stark contrast to the rugged, storm-swept setting. They moved with a practiced, menacing swagger, the kind that spoke of violence as a familiar tool. One was broad and powerfully built, a human battering ram. The other leaner, with sharp, cruel features and eyes that seemed to absorb the minimal light. They halted about 20 feet from Mike's grill, the wind whipping their voices away, forcing them to shout. The leaner one, clearly the leader, yelled, his voice strained but audible over the storm. "Trucker, open this door. The girl with you, she's coming with us. She's unwell, confused. We're her family, here to take her home." Mike activated his external PA system, his own voice now amplified, thundering into the night, dwarfing theirs. "She's not going anywhere with you. She's under my protection, and the state police are on their way. Back off." Beside him, Sarah gasped, pressing herself even further into the seat. "That's him, Marco," she whispered, her voice trembling violently. "He's my stepfather's head of security. He's brutal. The confirmation hardened Mike's resolve into diamond. These weren't concerned relatives. These were hired thugs, enforcers for a depraved puppet master. The burly man took a step forward, raising his hands in a mockery of peace. "Look, friend, no need for any trouble here. This is a private family matter. Just let her come out, and we can all get on with our night. There's been a terrible misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding," Mike's voice boomed from the PA, echoing off the wet trees lining the road, "is you thinking you can bully your way through this. She's terrified of you. That tells me everything I need to know. Now, I suggest you return to your vehicle and await the authorities." Marco's facade of civility shattered. His voice dropped, becoming a venomous snarl. "You're making a grave mistake, driver. You have no idea who you're meddling with. That girl belongs to Mr. Volkov, and Mr. Volkov does not appreciate delays. He certainly doesn't tolerate interference. Volkov. The name dripped with implied power and ruthlessness. Mike logged it, but intimidation was a language he'd faced down before. If anything, their threats only solidified his defiance. This was precisely the brand of tyranny he'd sworn to oppose. He felt a flicker of that old battlefield calm, the focusing of senses, the clarity that came when the lines were irrevocably drawn. "I don't care if she belongs to the Tsar of Russia," Mike retorted, his voice resonating with righteous anger. "She doesn't want to go with you, and in this country, that still means something. This is America, not your boss's private fiefdom where you can just snatch people off the road." He saw them exchange a quick, frustrated glance. Marco gestured sharply, and the heavily built man began to move towards the side of Mike's truck, clearly intending to try and force his way up to the cab door. Mike's hand slammed down on the air horn button. The ear-splitting, deafening blast ripped through the night, a sound powerful enough to shake the ground, echoing for miles through the storm-lashed landscape. It was a raw, primal roar of defiance. Both men flinched violently, staggering back a step, their hands instinctively flying to their ears. "Stay away from my truck," Mike bellowed, his voice now needing no amplification, carrying the full force of his fury. The bulky man hesitated, looking to Marco, who barked a furious, unintelligible order. The heavy resumed his approach, more cautiously now, but with a grim determination that spoke of violent intent. Mike knew he couldn't let them reach the door. Sarah was not a terror beside him, her eyes squeezed shut, silent tears streaming down her face. He had to do more. And then, piercing the cacophony of the storm and the dying echoes of the air horn, another sound began to penetrate the night. Faint at first, a high-pitched whine, then rapidly growing stronger, closer. Sirens. Multiple sirens, their urgent, rising and falling wail cutting through the wind and rain. They were close. Very close. Marco and his associate froze, their heads snapping up, expressions shifting from predatory confidence to sharp alarm as they scanned the highway in the direction of the approaching sound. Marco let out a string of curses, a torrent of guttural Russian that, while incomprehensible in words, conveyed a universe of frustrated rage. The arrogant certainty drained from their faces, replaced by a grudging, furious concern. "This isn't finished, trucker." Marco spat, his voice tight with venom as he backed away. "Mr. Volkov will hear about your interference. You will regret this day." They scrambled back toward their SUV, their expensive, tailored suits now looking merely pathetic, soaked and clinging. The SUV's engine roared to life with an angry snarl, with a spray of water and a screech of tires that fought for purchase on the slick pavement. It executed a hasty, wide U-turn and rocketed off into the darkness, vanishing as swiftly and menacingly as it had appeared. Not a moment too soon. Mere seconds later, the first set of flashing blue and red lights from a state trooper's cruiser crested a small rise, bearing down on a location, quickly followed by another and then another. Mike let out a shuddering breath. He hadn't realized he'd been holding captive in his chest. He turned to Sarah. Her eyes were wide open, staring not at him, but at the empty stretch of road where the black SUV had been just moments before. Then her gaze shifted to Mike, and the fragile dam of her composure finally, completely shattered. Great, gulping sobs racked her small frame, a torrent of tears, of terror, of relief, of utter, soul-deep exhaustion, pouring down her grime-streaked face. Mike reached over, his large, callous hand gently squeezing her shoulder. "It's okay now," he said, his voice soft in the falling rain, the warrior receding, the protector steadfast. "They're gone. You're truly safe now. Help is here." The flashing emergency lights bathed the cab in a pulsating kaleidoscope of red and blue. He could see more official vehicles arriving. Another cruiser, then the unmistakable boxy shape of an ambulance. The cavalry, true to their word, had arrived. The tense standoff was over. The immediate, life-threatening danger had passed, vanquished by courage and the timely intervention of the law. The arrival of the state troopers and paramedics brought a wave of efficient, professional calm that pushed back the night's lingering chaos. Doors opened and closed with purpose. Voices spoke with quiet authority and genuine concern, and the flashing lights cast long, dancing shadows to the now easing rain, as if the storm itself acknowledged that the worst was over. Two troopers, a man and a woman, approached Mike's cab, their expression serious but respectful. Mike rolled down his window, the cool, damp air surprisingly refreshing. "Evening, officers. Mighty glad to see you." "Mr. O'Connell?" asked a female trooper, her name tag reading as Ramirez. She had a no-nonsense air about her. Dispatch relayed the situation. "Can you walk us through what happened? Mike concisely recounted the night's events, from the shocking discovery of Sarah on the roadside to the tense confrontation with the men in the SUV. He provided a detailed description of the assailants, their vehicle, and made sure to mention the name Volkov. Sarah, still trembling but visibly more composed under the trooper's calm demeanor, corroborated his account. Her voice weak, but steady enough for them to grasp the full, terrifying scope of her ordeal. Paramedics gently coaxed Sarah from the cab, carefully assessing her condition while wrapping her in fresh, warm blankets before helping her onto a gurney. As they were about to wheel her towards a waiting ambulance, she stopped them, her eyes urgently searching for Mike. He had climbed down from his cab and was standing nearby, speaking with another officer. "Mike?" she called out, her voice small but clear in a momentary lull. He was at her side in an instant, her hand, still pale and showing the angry red marks on her wrist, reached out from beneath the blankets and found his. Her fingers, though cold, gripped his with surprising strength. "Thank you," she whispered, her eyes, so recently wide with unspeakable fear, now shimmering with profound, overwhelming gratitude. You saved my life. I truly don't know what would have happened if you hadn't stopped your truck." A warmth spread through Mike's chest, thawing corners of his heart he hadn't realized were still frozen. He simply nodded, a lump forming in his throat, rendering him momentarily speechless. "Just glad you're safe, Sarah. You focus on getting better now. These folks will take excellent care of you." He remembered the locket. Reaching into his pocket, he retrieved it and gently pressed its cool, intricate silver into her palm. "You dropped this back on the road. Figure it must be important to you." Her fingers closed around it convulsively, a soft sob catching in her throat. "My grandmother's," she managed, her voice thick with emotion. It's all I have left of her. Her courage." She looked up at him, a fragile, watery smile touching her lips. "You thought of everything." As the paramedics carefully wheeled her toward the ambulance, Sergeant Ramirez approached Mike again, a look of deep respect in her eyes. "Mr. O'Connell, you demonstrated extraordinary courage and exceptional thinking tonight. That young woman is incredibly fortunate you were the one who came along. Blocking the road, facing down those men, that took more than just guts. That took character." Mike just shrugged, a gesture of innate humility, uncomfortable with the effusive praise. "Just did what anyone would do, Sergeant, or what anyone should do in that spot." "Not everyone, Mr. O'Connell," she corrected him, a slight, knowing smile on her own face. "Believe me, not everyone. We'll need a formal statement from you, of course, but for tonight, you've done more than enough. We'll ensure Miss Sarah is taken to a secure facility once she's medically cleared. And we will definitely be looking into this Mr. Volkov. Sounds like a particularly nasty individual." Just then another, more familiar sound rumbled up the highway, the distinct, powerful growl of more big rigs. First one, then two, then three, and finally a fourth semi-truck pulled up in protective semicircle, their myriad running lights transforming the dreary scene into something akin to a friendly, illuminated fortress. A chorus of air horns sounded in unison, a resounding salute that vibrated through the night air. Word had clearly spread like wildfire on the CB. Doors of cabs opened and fellow truckers emerged, their faces etched with concern, solidarity, and a shared, unspoken understanding. One of them, a burly, older driver with a kind, weathered face, strode over to Mike. "Heard your call on the wire." Big Mike rounded up a few of the boys and came as fast as these rigs would let us. "Everything's secure here." Mike looked at the determined faces of these men, his comrades of the asphalt ribbon, who had dropped everything and driven through the night, ready to stand shoulder to shoulder with him. No questions asked. A powerful, humbling sense of community, of belonging, washed over him. "Yeah, everything's under control now, boys." Situation defused. "I deeply appreciate you all coming out." The immense tension he'd been carrying in his shoulders, a knot that felt like it had been there for years, began to loosen, to finally unwind. He had faced down a tangible evil, protected the innocent, held his ground, and not been found wanting. The ghosts of past regrets, the shadows of that dusty road far away, seemed to recede, to lose some of their sting in the light of this night's victory. He watched as the ambulance, its lights now a steady, reassuring glow, pulled away smoothly, carrying Sarah towards safety, healing, and the promise of new, unchained life. He had made a difference. The simple, profound satisfaction of that unassailable truth settled over him like the warmth of a cherished memory. The rain had completely ceased by the time the last of the emergency vehicles departed, leaving behind the clean, earthy scent of a washed world. The other truckers, after ensuring Mike was truly okay and the situation fully resolved, offered quiet word support, a shared nod of respect, and then, one by one, their powerful engines rumbled back to life. They pulled away, their tail lights disappearing into pre-dawn glow that was beginning to paint the eastern horizon in delicate strokes of gray, lavender, and rose. Mike was left alone with his rig on the now quiet, peaceful highway. He took a deep, cleansing breath, the air crisp and alive. He provided his formal statement to a trooper who remained behind, recounting every detail with clarity and precision. He made sure to describe the locket carefully, in case it held any evidentiary value beyond its deep sentimental worth to Sarah. Finally, with the sun just beginning to crest the horizon, painting the world in gold, he was clear to continue his interrupted journey. Climbing back into the familiar, comforting embrace of his cab, Mike O'Connell felt changed. Subtly but irrevocably, the long road ahead, stretching out towards the brilliant promise of the rising sun, didn't seem quite as solitary as it once had. The night's harrowing events replayed in his mind, not as a trauma, but as a reaffirmation of what one ordinary person could achieve when confronted with the stark choice between apathy and action. He had chosen action, and in doing so, he had reclaimed a part of himself he thought long lost. Several weeks later, during a mandated rest stop in a small, sun-baked diner in western Arizona, a news report on the corner television caught his attention. It was a national story detailing the dramatic arrest and indictment of a notoriously elusive international businessman named Viktor Volkov. The reporter spoke of charges including racketeering, conspiracy, and, significantly, human trafficking. The report highlighted the bravery of a key witness, a young woman who had miraculously escaped Volkov's clutches. Her courageous testimony, along with crucial evidence she had managed to preserve, evidence Mike suspected, that might have once resided within a small, antique silver locket, had been instrumental in dismantling his vast criminal enterprise. Her face was obscured, her identity fiercely protected. But the reporter mentioned she was now in a safe place, courageously rebuilding her life with the dedicated support of victim advocacy organizations. A slow, genuine smile spread across Mike's face, a smile that reached deep into his eyes. He knew with absolute certainty it was Sarah. He had played a small, pivotal role in her much larger, incredibly brave story of survival and ultimate triumph, a single, sturdy stepping stone on her arduous path to freedom and justice. He thought about the values he cherished, the ones that formed the very spine of his existence: duty, honor, unwavering courage, and the simple, profound act of looking out for one's fellow human being. These weren't just lofty, abstract ideals. They were the living, breathing bedrock of a decent society, the resilient threads that wove the vibrant, enduring fabric of the American spirit. He saw them reflected in the steadfastness of the soldiers he'd served alongside, in the selfless bravery of first responders who routinely rushed towards danger, and in the quiet heroism of everyday folks who, when tested by crisis, discover an extraordinary wellspring of strength within themselves. Folks like him, just a truck driver who happened to be in the right place at precisely the right critical time. As he eased his Peterbilt back onto the open highway, the vast, magnificent American landscape unfolded before him in all its glory. Mike O'Connell felt a powerful, renewed sense of purpose. The old weight he carried was still a part of him, but was lighter now, counterbalanced by the profound, empowering knowledge that when the call came, he had answered it without hesitation. He was just one man on one long, winding road, but he understood, with clarity that resonated deep in his soul, that the journey of life was about far more than just logging miles and delivering cargo. It was about connection, about courage, and about the indomitable, enduring power of the human spirit to stand tall and fight for what is right, for what is good. And on the great highways of America, beneath its boundless, hopeful skies, such heroes will be found everywhere, often in the most unexpected of places. Their quiet, unassuming valor a constant, unwavering beacon of hope in an ever-changing world. He checked his mirrors, took a sip of his lukewarm coffee, and settled in for the long drive, a sense of profound, quiet pride warming him from the inside out. He was Big Mike O'Connell. He was a Marine. He was a trucker. And he was an American through and through,